All right, and now we're being joined by my colleague, Dr. Eben Goodstein, who is the director of the graduate programs in sustainability at Bard College and the co-director of the worldwide teach-in on climate and justice. So Eben, as I say, will speak after Margaret. So I want to begin by introducing Margaret Wang, who I thank you, Margaret, for joining us today. Margaret is the co-founder and chief operating officer of SubjectToClimate, a very exciting group that has been working over the past couple of years to make curricular materials about climate change and climate solutions more accessible to people. And we've been collaborating with Margaret for a little bit less than a year at this point. And I have to say that it seems like everybody who I talk to in this field who's heading climate education organizations seems to have already been collaborating with SubjectToClimate. So Margaret, you and your team are doing fabulous work, and it's really a pleasure to be working with you. So I will again invite everybody, thank you again for being here, invite you if you wish to share your contact information in the chat, and maybe we could also ask you to indicate whether you heard about this particular webinar through the Worldwide Teach-In, or through SubjectToClimate, or through the Faculty Collaborative, or through other means, because we're all promoting this, and so we're interested in just hearing where you all are coming from. So without further ado, Margaret, why don't you take it away, please?
Great. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful morning. And so what I wanted to first start off with is I know David introduced who I am. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SubjectToClimate. Prior to that, I was in education for several years. I was a teacher and educator in high school, but afterwards I got my master's in education policy and really focused on how do we scale climate change education. And I'm here today because I wanted to share some tools that might help you as you're thinking about how you might integrate climate change into your curriculum and your coursework. So before we get started, I wanted to kind of just hear from you. Feel free to write in the chat. What is your personal connection to climate change? Why are you here on a Thursday learning more about climate change? Why do you care? And so if you can go ahead and write in the chat, what is your personal connection to climate change? Thank you as well. And developing environmental ed in Pakistan. Right, exactly. The floods in Pakistan and now in many other countries. And so this is something that's affecting you personally. Thank you, Terzo from Bangladesh. Yes, so a lot of us are here because, you know, we are feeling the effects of climate change and others disproportionately more so. Agriculture in the Philippines is a dying sector. Thank you, Alec. And David, thank you so much. It has become your life work. And as people are writing this in, wonderful. Engaging communities in climate emergency. As we're writing, as you see and read how other people are being connected, are personally connected to climate change, it's clear that this is not just something in science. This is something that is related to so many people's personal experiences. It relates to economics. It relates to climate justice, social studies. It relates to a lot of, communications and, human geography and so many other things. I see Ed mentioned something about ethical dimensions of climate change. So there is so much going we know that climate change is interdisciplinary, and it's no longer very important to include it in science courses, of course, but it's something that can be integrated in all subjects and what you're teaching. So that's what we're hoping to do, to talk about how you can incorporate climate change, or maybe more broadly, sustainability, to everything. And it relates to everything. If you look at, and this is a great link that I'll share in the chat, and we won't spend too much time on this graphic, but this graphic is from UC Berkeley, and it's a great infographic to see, what are our, it relates to well-being. A lot of people talk about well-being, displacement of human populations, to see in this, field of sustainability, how does this relate to what I'm teaching? And you can see that there's just so many different layers that you could integrate into your course with this whole theme of sustainability. So I'm going to go back to the presentation and ask you a second question now. We've all established that you're personally connected to climate change, that it's an important topic to teach and incorporate. A lot of you are here to get ideas also on how to teach about this. So what are some issues that educators, whether it's you or your peers, what are some issues that they might face when they want to teach about climate change? Or in other words, why are some educators reluctant to teach about climate change? What are some of the barriers that you might face when you're trying to incorporate it into your course? Feel free to write it in the chat before we get into this. So Zal, they don't know the science behind it, and you're following an extremely regimented course, right? Lack of education. So maybe, I'm not sure if you're in the university level, K through 12, they don't teach about climate change. By the time they get to you, they need to start from the basics of what is climate change, right? At any level. Lack of information, lack of understanding of how it might connect to the subject area, fear of community pushback in conservative areas. I hear you a lot about the community pushback as well. Sometimes they can't connect the concept of climate change with their discipline, too political, too depressing. So now that I'm hearing all this, I want to be able to address a lot of these pain points. So exactly, this topic is so broad. Sometimes it's really broad for us to grasp, but our students to grasp is another story as well. So before SubjectToClimate was started, I talked to many, albeit first K through 12 educators on, why is climate change not being taught? And it's really interesting. It actually fits into a lot of what you are saying. And I think one of the biggest reasons that teachers don't teach about climate change is that it doesn't fit into the curriculum, is what we heard. I care about this, I'm personally affected by it, but it doesn't fit in my math course or something like that. I was an economics teacher for several years and a business and management teacher. And my first year teaching, I did not see clearly how I could integrate it without maybe losing what I needed to teach. Controversial subject, that was something we heard as well and what was brought up in the chat. And I'm noticing in this chat, it's not just about lack of knowledge from teachers, because that was something that teachers mentioned. They mentioned that they had low teacher confidence, that they were not taught about climate change in their discipline. So how could they teach that as well? But I'm hearing and seeing in the chat that it's also lack of knowledge on the student level. And a thing that a lot of educators pointed out was lack of time and resources. I know I want to teach about climate change, but has this been done? I don't have the time to kind of look at what's already out there. So let me go ahead and introduce a tool that we created. So I want to mention that when we first created this tool, SubjectToClimate, we focused specifically for K through 12 educators. But talking to David and talking to a lot of other folks, that we see that, in the 12th grade, and I'll show you in a little bit, and maybe the AP IB college level, that a lot of the resources could be used for your context as well. or at the very least, it can show you the interdisciplinary connections for climate change. And so Subject to Climate was born out of this idea that we need to make it easier for educators to teach about climate change in all subjects and all grade levels. And so we're a nonprofit online connector, and we connect K-12 educators to credible and engaging materials on climate change. And overall, our goal is to make sure that climate change teaching and learning is accessible to all. I'm going to demo the site to show you some of the resources and point out specifically what might be good for higher ed while I do that. But just a brief overview of what we have. We have over 1,500 resources that have been reviewed by a scientist and an educator, and they're different types of teaching resources. So if you're looking for videos, articles, whatnot, and I'll show you in a little bit. And then we also have lesson plans that have been written by teachers for every single subject. So again, I know that this audience is higher ed, and our lessons have been created by K through 12 educators, but I'll show some high school lesson plans that could inspire you for you to understand, like, maybe this is a connection that I want to bring up in my course. We also have news articles, so current events related to sustainability. And we also have professional learning opportunities. So again, usually for a lot of K through 12 educators, the professional learning opportunities is a great way for them to brush up or learn the foundational, learn foundational knowledge about climate change. But if you find that this is useful for your students, because I saw that some have said that, you know, my students lack the basic knowledge of climate change, perhaps some of these professional learning opportunities might help them learn a little bit more about climate change. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through the platform. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So anybody can access our website. It's subjecttoclimate.org. And basically, as you can see, and I'll talk about New Jersey in a little bit, this is the resource database. And let me just check that. Great, I'm on the right screen. So the resource database is, as I mentioned, a database with all the different resources that you could find. So when we think about different subjects, how does it connect to different subjects? Let's say you're teaching an economics course. There are different economics related resources. And again, I think the higher ed, we can look, I think if you look at 11th, 12th, and even AP College, we just started doing the AP/college. So we're going to start looking for more higher ed. There could be different resources for you to integrate into your classroom. So for example, Crash Course does a lot of great videos that are at the AP College level. And this one talks about computer science, Cold War and consumerism. So a little bit of economics if you're looking into this, or, the $1 billion weather and climate disasters. This might not be as relevant to you, but these are standards from the K through 12. But I'll go ahead and show you all the different types of resource types you can find. You can use this to look for, let's say you just want a quick activity, or you want articles. Again, in higher ed, maybe articles are more relevant, or interactive media, or podcasts, or scientific reports or papers. So you can also filter based on the resource type. We're still building out, we just launched a year ago, so most of our resources in English, but it's our intention to have various resource languages. And also if you want to focus on a specific region. If you find a provider that you really like, you can also filter by them. For example, going back to Crash Course, let's say you saw a Crash Course video and you thought that was great. You can also look at all their different Crash Course. There's one on thermodynamics, for example, or the physics of heat, or how the environment affects your health. So the last thing you can do is also use the search for keywords. For example, if you're looking at sea level rise, and that's something that you're going to be talking about, you can also use the keyword search to find a resource. So let's say that you do find a resource, and we can look at MIT This one's sea level rise and climate change, and it's a lesson. You can read a quick synopsis about it. So this one includes, podcasts, maps and activities and discussion questions. An educator has reviewed it and written a couple of tips for you as well on how you might integrate this. And also scientist notes. So as I mentioned, a scientist has reviewed it. Less relevant here, but it talks about what standards it hits, as well as related resources. So maybe what you might want to pair this up with, maybe you want to pair it with a video on climate change displacement as well. The other thing are climate change lessons by teachers. And I mentioned that, we work with K through 12 educators. And so, but what I think this could be useful for higher ed is, I think that an inspiration on how you can make connections between climate change and your discipline could be really interesting. For example, if I go through 9 through 12 and maybe go through math and engineering, this is a whole lesson on, the math behind sea level rise or desalination exploration. But again, this is very math based. So you can see how different disciplines can be connected. For art, this is a visual art analysis. So this is something that shows you how you can connect art with climate change. And even if you're in, let's say, social studies and justice for 9 through 12, here are different, this lesson students look at, challenging the government to protect natural resources and researching why natural resources are a source of conflict. So this is another example. Or how should the federal government spend our money or nuclear fission? Should we continue to use this energy technology? So I'll click into one so you can see what these lesson plans that we work with educators look like. And again, they've been written for K through 12 classroom, but you can always adapt them. So in this lesson, you can see that there's a synopsis and then what the students are doing. So they're discussing rising global temperatures and researching nuclear fission technology and forming policy proposal advocating for or against nuclear energy. And, they're working collaboratively to design a future energy policy. So everything's here. The slides are there for you to use. We make it very visual for the students because we know that now in a media-driven world that this is very important for students. And you can, click and then you can make a copy of this slideshow and adapt it to your course. We also have student documents, which you can make a copy of it and adapt it to your course. So we try to make it very easy so you can use it right away. Again, all of them come with teaching tips, scientist note standards. Now, if you want to see the actual lesson, here's what you're doing in the actual lesson. But you can also open it up on a Google Doc and you can adjust it the way if you need it, if you want to print it out and you want to write notes on it yourself. So this is the, climate change lessons by teachers. So you can see different disciplines and get inspired on how you might integrate it into what you're already teaching in your discipline. We also have news articles for students. And so this takes current events and brings it to your classroom. So a lot of students care about what's going on in the world. And sometimes the best way to connect students to climate change is to bring things that are here right now. And so, for example, these get updated quite frequently. For example, this is a news article written today, and this is through a partnership from The Juice. The Juice has news articles for everything, but because they understand the necessity of bringing sustainability news to students, they've made this free for everybody. So this is a lower reading level, but this is a way to differentiate for different reading levels. So again, for higher ed, it might make sense with grades 11 plus, but I think there's an opportunity for English language learners to be able to get the same content, but maybe at a lower lexile level. Students can look at vocabulary cards and then also a quick check for understanding. And then you can see what are related resources as well, so that if you wanted to keep on teaching this, there are other resources to supplement so you can bring current events to the classroom. There's also professional learning. This was meant for our K through 12 educators that want, when we talk to K through 12 educators a lot, what they mentioned was that they wanted, there was a lack of confidence. But I can see this as something that you might actually share with your students also to brush up on climate change as well. So we separate it into conferences, courses, guides, webinars, and workshops. And 2 different topics. So it's about teaching methods and climate change basics. And I think this is great for higher ed as well. So if you look at teaching methods, you can see if there's any professional development on, social emotional learning. And one of the things that I think is really important to note, by the way, is that a lot of you guys mentioned about the social emotional part, right? That students might not be able to, will be overwhelmed with climate anxiety. So you can learn about the teaching methods. You can also look at climate change basics as well. I think, by the way, MIT has a great interactive course that's a great, foundational knowledge about climate change. So does climate science. These are all great if you wanted. Let's say your course isn't rooted in environmental science and you needed a quick brush up about climate change sciences. This is great for you, or even great for your students. So these are professional learning opportunities. And now this one's less relevant guidance for school boards, but I wanted to show you something, another thing that you or your students can use. So we've recently partnered with MIT Climate Portal in bringing help articles to you. So as you're exploring, if if you are, looking at a resource and there's a term that you might not know, or there's a question, you can search the help articles. And these are climate change explainers or pedagogical help articles. So for example, if you might not understand what ocean acidification is, there's an article about ocean acidification written by MIT Climate Portal. And so that can give you, this is something that you or a student can use on the side, because it allows you it's kind of like a glossary for you as well. But at the same time, you can also browse our pedagogical help articles, like how can I integrate climate change into English language arts? How can I connect climate change to my economics course? How do I persuade my colleagues to teach about climate change? Should I say climate crisis? Should I use that phrase? And so I see a lot of questions in here, and I think that some of these might be useful. How do I persuade my colleagues to teach about climate change as well? So hopefully these are all resources that you can use in higher ed as well, and for you to share with your peers. So I'm going to go back, and I'm just conscious of timing so that we have enough time for Q&A. So I might quickly skip a quick activity and talk a little bit more about New Jersey. So New Jersey, by the way, is the first state to require climate change education across all grade levels and subjects in public K through 12 schools. So the hope is that when students come into higher ed, they know about climate change. So we've partnered with various groups, New Jersey School Boards Association, Sustainable Jersey, the College of New Jersey Audubon, and National Wildlife Federation, to create a New Jersey version of everything that I just showed you. The difference is that, we work with New Jersey educators for New Jersey specific lesson plans, and then also New Jersey specific professional learning opportunities, as well as resources that are linked to New Jersey student learning standards. We've released the New Jersey Hub on June, and we've also written a case study about this as well. And so if you're interested in learning more, feel free to click into this, or I'll share it a bit.ly link afterwards. So we're excited what this means for New Jersey. It's for K through 12, but we're hoping that, universities will also take form. I've read a lot in Stanford and Harvard that they're trying to make climate change being integrated in all subjects and all courses as well. But we know that, all educators will need, support, as we've seen the issues that you've raised in the chat on the barriers that you might face. And so now what I'll do, and David, I think what I'll do is probably share a couple more resources and then open it up for Q&A before passing it over to Worldwide Teach-In and David. But a couple of things, and I'll share the link. Let me just go ahead and get that ready. So we have a community called our STC Climate Champions. So I'm just going to put this in the chat. If you want to join our community, and we also have our newsletter, and we always, so I just put those links on, and now I'm going to resume. So in our community, what we do is we share resources. We ask for feedback on our website. We also have opportunities for some of our free swag as well. But if you want to be connected on what educators are doing in climate change education, feel free to join the community. We also have the newsletter that I put into the chat. And stay connected with us. We're on all social media platforms, and we're regularly posting about opportunities regarding climate change education from several of our partners. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and pause if there are any questions before passing it to David.
If you have any questions, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question. There's few enough of us that we can just go that way. Or if you don't have access to your microphone and want to put a question in the chat, that's fine too. Okay,
well,
so
while we're waiting, let me just, Margaret, just want to congratulate you on such fabulous work. Your organization has really filled a hole that is super important. One question, do you have non-English language resources?
Yeah, so one of the things that, so we just launched last year. I'm just going to share how you could find non-English resources. We don't have many. We're a small team, but we've started to categorize non-English resources. As you can see, it's not too many. We're primarily English resources, but there are a couple Spanish. And when there's Spanish, usually what that means is that there's like a Spanish version of the lesson. So that's as far as we've gotten in terms of resource language. I see a chat by Julia. How you can get to is this little guy right here called Climate Socrates, and that's how you can get to the glossary. We're working on adding a help center on the menu to make it clear on how to get there, but for now you can get it here.
Great. And Margaret, if people here have curricular resources that they use that they would like to share, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so let me just show you about get involved. So on our screen, there is something called get involved. And then, there's partner with us, right? So you can read about what a content partnership looks like for sure if you click on partner with us. And then there's just a, content requests or, partnerships, and feel free to put your email and message, and that's how we get a lot of inquiry on the curricular resources. It's really great that people are starting to message us about the curricular resources that are out there. So it's about us and get involved.
Okay, and so then let's say that I do have a lesson that I want to share. I go through the contact you link to do that. What are the next steps, and how then is the review process conducted as somebody submits something to you?
Yeah, so not everything that gets submitted gets put into our database, and we have a pretty rigorous review process. And so one of the things is that we have a rubric on this. So first of all, we identify content providers, but definitely, through research and recommendations through the content, through the request for. But we review the credibility of content providers. So we look through a couple of randomized sample. If you're coming from a database, we look at a randomized sample of like different content on there. And then our content management team actually looks through looks at the resource itself. But there's a criteria that we have used that looks at, ease of use, the depth of the amount of educator burden to get somewhere. But we also look at other factors on pedagogical, the pedagogical depth as well. So it gets reviewed, and then so it does actually take a while, and not everything gets through, because one of the most important things that our educators have stated that they've enjoyed in their resource database is that everything is easy to use in there, and it's not going to take too much time to they're high quality as well. So we don't accept everything, but we also give feedback on here's some of the reasons why we might not be able to put in our resource database. And we just want to make sure that there's that, it doesn't become a clearinghouse, which I think is great to have, but we know that educators have no time. So that's a process. And I see a question in chat. Is there a way to connect to specific place-based resources? So we do have also regions as well to see more place-based resources. So if you're looking for some on the African continent, some of these are more specific to the region. So there's these filters as well. For example, let's say looking for more Middle East. So these are more relevant to the Middle East.
And then what about within the US? I mean, I know you have the New Jersey specific focus, but so for example, do you have anything that is more generic like New England, or is that too fine a resolution for you?
So we have USA Northeast, and
Okay.
so that helps a little bit with it.
Mhm.
But another thing that you can also do is look if there's New England, and there's less, this one thinks it's England, so maybe that's not the best one. This one's England, but if you're looking for California, for example, these are more California centric resources.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Margaret. And if as we're talking in a moment, if there are other questions that you have, you can put them in the chat, and Margaret will get back to them. So I do want to transition in a moment, but before we do that, Tobias Hess, who is our education outreach manager for the Worldwide Teach-In, has put together a quick poll just to so we can find out how you heard about this teach-in, and if you could just click on that. It's only 4 real quick questions just as to how you found out about this particular webinar. And I'll also say that tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be repeating this or doing another version. And so if you have people who want to join us for that, maybe Tobias, you could also put the link for registration for the 9 o'clock tonight one into the chat. So Margaret, one more question here, actually 2 more questions here. What do you feel is the difference between a clearinghouse and the resources on SubjectToClimate?
So the difference between clearinghouse you mentioned, or so I think one of the things is the process that we talked about on how we're trying to we're really trying to save educators time. And so we're not just putting here are a bunch of resources and I hope you find the one that works for you. We try to curate that first for you, but we're really trying to use metadata and tags so that when you use the different filters, you can look for exactly what you want. And so that's kind of the biggest difference. And then I also see a couple of other questions in the chat. Are there tools for helping teachers directly collaborate with each other? So we haven't introduced that yet. We have, some people have used the Facebook group to talk to each other, and maybe that could be a stepping stone. But we have not introduced like a community board or anything at this moment. But I hope that, that's something we can do in the future. The other thing is that it appears that the link that I sent for the newsletter isn't working. So in a bit, I'm going to just find the link.
I clicked on it. It's a link to sign up. So I think it's okay, Margaret.
It works. Okay. The newsletter link. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, and then also just in terms of Tom, to your question for helping teachers to collaborate, we have actually a couple things, and maybe Tobias, you can put them into the chat. We have a climate change education LinkedIn group, and we have just started a Google group for people to share. And so those are new things, and there aren't too many people yet, but if they are useful, people will join and participate. So I do want to transition here to my colleague and friend, Dr. Eben Goodstein, who is going to talk briefly about the worldwide teach-in on climate and justice, and how that can give you an opportunity to use some of and I'd say I loved hearing the things in the chat that you all are doing, and so find ways to expand on that and help to connect with the community of climate educators around the world. So Eben, why don't you go ahead, please?
Thank you, David. And Margaret, thank you again. Really inspiring work and really important work. So I can see how as teachers start to tap into this, it's really going to make a difference. So excited to see this build. And of course, we're all here because we are deeply climate concerned, and we know there's not a lot of time. So we had a conversation this morning, I guess, really about curricular engagement. How do you bring this into the classroom? And we want to talk with you all briefly about how do you engage students across the curriculum in the 1 day or 1 week period of the next worldwide teach-in that is happening on or around March 29th, 2023. So let me just, actually, it'd be great if people could just put in the chat, are you familiar with the teach-in? Just say yes or no, because I think a lot of folks on the call here I've already heard about the teach-in, and I don't want to repeat myself too much. So do we have a no or yes? Let's just see what we've got. Yes, no, we've got a couple no's, a couple yeses. Okay, some yeses, 3 no's. What we'd like to do today is sort of demo, if you haven't seen it, our video explainer for the teach-in, and actually that would be helpful for us to get some feedback from you. So rather than hear from me about what the teach-in is about, we'd love it if you would sit with us, watch this about 10-minute video, and then we'll rejoin for a conversation if that will work. And then you can tell us, does this make sense? Does this inspire me? Is there more I'm going to need to know? So is that okay with everybody? Thumbs up. And Tobias, can you roll that? Or should I do it?
If you have it ready, then.
All right, it'll just take, I don't have it ready, but it'll just take me a second. And I don't know if I have sharing privileges. Do I?
I just made you a co-host, yeah.
Okay, so I can share my screen. All right, and of course we always have to double check and make sure this is all going to work. Our optimized for video clip, share. All right, you guys can probably see the.
Really.
Sorry, what? Let's give it a second. Oh, I don't need to show that. There we go. Okay.
After yet another scorching summer, more and more people, students, faculty, staff, community members are growing deeply climate concerned. Your worldwide teach-in will mobilize the power of educators and students and empower a generation of fighting to stabilize the climate and advance climate justice. This past year, the teach-in engaged tens and thousands of students at more than 350 universities, colleges, high school, and faith communities in 50 countries. In March 2023, help us reach hundreds of thousands.
Why organize a climate teach-in? The worldwide teach-in gets people talking about climate and justice. If we don't talk about climate change, then we won't act to stop it. Climate silence and inaction equals death for tens of millions of people, animals, marine, and terrestrial life. We all need to get comfortable talking about climate all the time. The teach-in helps us do that. There are so many powerful avenues for students to get involved in climate action, as volunteers and interns, as activists, and especially in the careers they choose to pursue. At this extraordinary time, the worldwide teach-in can inspire us all to put our talents behind this critically important work.
Climate Teach-In is a bottom-up educational event focused on solution to climate crisis in community and globally, event that create a real dialogue. The worldwide Teach-In is a call to organize events on campus or community on or around March 29, 2023. Climate Teach-In can be at college, university, primary, middle, secondary schools, museum, faith, civil society communities. We have resources that make it easy to organize events that attract audiences beyond those already talking about climate. Here are some examples from 2022. Africa Network of Young Leaders for Peace and Sustainable Development event in 21 different countries with over 1,000 participants. Washington, D.C., USA. 9 universities came together on a DC-wide climate event, exemplifying the unifying power of climate education. Islamabad, Pakistan. After a 5-day climate educator training programs, teachers brought climate education to their classrooms. Broward County Public School District, Florida, USA. A youth climate summit with over 7,000 participants. Every Wednesday, we hold virtual organizing meeting where you can hear from those that have already done this before and where you can develop your own teach-in vision. I hope to see you there.
Now, how do you organize a teach-in? The key to a successful teach-in is relying on homegrown talent, not outside experts. The more local educators you involve directly from your school or community, the more people will attend the event. Faculty, students, and other participants don't need to be climate experts, just climate-concerned people who can speak to climate change and their area of expertise. History, psychology, physics, leadership, music, green buildings, climate touches everything. Here are several teach-in models for high schools, colleges, and universities. For K-8 and faith teach-ins, please see our website. The first model focuses on a campus-wide in-class teach-in. We call it Make Climate a Class. This model asks all climate-concerned faculty on campus, from artists to philosophers to scientists, to spend 30 minutes on climate in their classes sometime around March 29th. Again, these are not climate experts, just climate-concerned teachers. Here's how it works. For the first 15 minutes, faculty discuss how people in each of their fields are helping solve climate change. Again, economists, chemists, writers, sociologists, mathematicians, health scientists, everyone. For the second half, zoom in an alum who is actually doing this work. Or if you can find an alum, then a professional or a colleague who is a climate expert. Done! This is an easy way for faculty to focus on climate from a career perspective, helping young people who are interested in psychology see how they could be a climate psychologist, how a musician could be a climate musician, or how a business student could work on business climate solutions. If 20 faculty do this model of Make Climate a Class, then 400 students will be engaged in your teach-in. Students can take action by emailing all their spring semester teachers, asking them to participate and talk about what climate careers in their fields look like.
A second model is a twist on Make Climate a Class that we call Cottage for Climate. To do this, find 4 climate-concerned faculty members, for example, an artist, an anthropologist, a chemist, and a history teacher. What do these 4 disciplines have in common? Artists, historians, chemists, and anthropologists all study climate change and contribute with just solutions. Step 2. Have them each reschedule one class on the week of March 29th so they can all meet together either on Zoom or in person. Automatically, you have a class of more than 100 students and 4 teachers to run the class. This is a fun way for students and teachers to learn together. Step 3. What do the 4 teachers do during this hour? Same as Make Climate a Class, but now students hear about climate solutions and climate careers from 4 different teachers and 4 different alums. You can have 4 or 6 or 20 of these Cottage for Climate in class teach-ins, and that way engage hundreds of thousands of students to talk about climate change, justice, and solutions.
The next method is the 3-hour teaching. This is a campus-wide, all-school event held in the evening. Hundreds of schools, colleges, and universities did a version of this in the 2022 Teaching Let's Match. This activity was organized by students, sustainable staff, faculty, and administrators. Step 1. Find 10 or more climate-concerned faculty and staff members from all disciplines. They are not climate experts, just climate-concerned educators. They will do this gladly because they are really worried about climate change, just like you.
Step 2. Group the educators into panels with titles like Climate Communication or Climate Science, What You Need to Know. Last year we saw topics like overcoming climate despair and food systems and climate justice. Ask the teachers to each talk for only 5 minutes about how their discipline relates to climate. A musician could talk about why there are no climate change songs, an astronomy professor on the idea of the Earthship. These 5-minute talks require little preparation from the faculty. Then devote 30 minutes each session to student discussion. Step 3. Have the participating faculty all require, incentivize, or inspire their students to show up. Automatically, you have a gathering of 100 or more students and lots of teachers. You also need some kind of solutions-focused concluding panel. You can review models, resources, and documentation of last year's teach-ins for inspiration on our website. 3-hour teach-in is a terrific way to create interdisciplinary dialogue about climate solutions across your campus and engage hundreds of students.
There are many fun ways to build out your teach-in, including theater performances, stand-up comedy sessions, art installations, museum and gallery exhibits, and faith-centered events. We have models for all of these from kindergarten through college. Go to our website to learn more. It may seem hard to find the time to organize a teach-in for your community. Our team is here to support you, but you have to step forward. What is the biggest threat to our future? It's all of us thinking someone else will lead, that somehow someone else will solve the climate crisis. We're running out of time. Now, not next month, not next year, we need to step up. Join us.
Okay, that is our thrilling and exciting and fun informational video. Love to hear.
And 2 of the speakers are with us today.
Yeah, we've got Armella and Tony's with us too. So fabulous.
3 of us, and Tobias.
And Tobias, of course. Yeah. Especially from the people for whom this is new, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Does this make sense? What questions you have after watching the video? Anybody? Any questions or thoughts? It's all crystal clear, super self-explanatory. You're going to do it. That's the most important question. Are you going to do this?
Ed's raising his hand. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I'm teaching a climate change course next semester, college level course. And I mean, would something to do require my students to attend one online event and maybe write a review of it? Or, I'd like to involve my class in it somehow. I'm teaching on Zoom. It's a synchronous course on June, on climate change. So I'm just trying to think of a way to involve my class in that somehow.
I would say have them organize an event for the teach-in that other people can come to.
Okay.
We had a number of people who taught climate change related classes last year do that.
Okay.
And so that could, and one thing they could do would be ask all of their other teachers to make climate a class, right? So the very first week you could say, here's an email you could send to your, that might be a little, I don't know, you might get some blowback from that if you're asking
right.
that. But anyway, they could certainly invite their professors, right? If they wanted to participate in interdisciplinary session.
Sure. Okay. Great.
But get them actually doing something in some sort of broader climate education on campus.
Right. Not so passive, just watch a lecture or something like that, to actually do something themselves.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
One thing we're going to have 2 items that might be of interest to your students. One is sort of a recipe for doing a thing on climate comedy. And maybe they would enjoy organizing that. It'll feature a 15-minute video of kind of the best of climate comedy from the University of Colorado with like instructions on how to run a session for everybody in the rest of the school to participate on Zoom or in person. So that might be a really fun thing for them to do.
Okay.
And we also have a playwriting contest, and we're going to be, if you've got any theater students in your class that want to perform a short play, they could do that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know Eva Bratman at Franklin and Marshall?
No, I don't.
She, I just sent you a direct message with her contact information. Eva worked with her senior seminar last year, and they organized a teach-in for the whole Franklin and Marshall community and engaged some of their local office holders and things like that. So it's a good example of a class actually organizing a teach-in.
Great, thanks.
All right, thanks, Allison. Other questions or comments? So Lisa has a question about how to work with faculty who do not think they know enough about climate change to teach it. Resources and fact-check materials. And Lisa did miss the earlier presentation on subject to climate. So maybe even you comment just on sort of engaging with the faculty, and then Margaret, you could just say a couple quick things about subject to climate and that.
Yeah, and then we should wrap up. But I did want to say, this is our brand new and blank map. You'll notice that there are no bubbles on this whatsoever. And we want to fix that as fast as possible. So and the reason is we're just getting it fixed up where we can launch it. So you'll receive an email from us. Please register your event. This is off of our main website. So you can register your event and you'll get a little bubble that will pop up on your school. And that's really important because we need the psychological support of the recognition that hundreds of people around the world are participating. So even if you don't know what you want to do with the teach-in, but you know you want to do something, you want to involve your class, go ahead and get your event registered. That'll also inspire the students to go, oh, look, we're on the map. We got to do something. Tobias, why don't you just drop a link to the main website in there? If you just follow the link to register your event, this will pop up. You know, that's what this whole project is really about, is like trying to engage student faculty who really care about climate change. And, you know, 50, 70, 80% of your faculty are super depressed and anxious about climate change. We want to take that anxiety and that depression and use it to mobilize people to actually do something. And suppose I'm teaching a geometry class, right? Or a history class. It has nothing to do with climate change, but I still feel like it's important enough that I want to bring it in. The way we're approaching it is through this idea of talking with your students, not about, you know, climate change as a science thing or something or impacts, but really just talk about how historians or chemists or artists are working on climate change. And that's something any of us can do, right? It takes, you know, 10 minutes of Googling on the web to sort of understand, you know, a few examples of people working from your discipline on climate change solutions. So that's our primary recommendation, is to get people talking about climate change with their students from their own disciplinary perspective. You know, Margaret's taken it, you know, a much important step further to actually develop lesson plans that illustrate this stuff and that you can, you know, bring in. But as an entry point, anybody can talk about how people in their field are thinking about and addressing climate change, and ideally inspire students who like economics to think about becoming climate economists, or people who are business majors think about, you know, becoming, you know, starting a climate solutions oriented business. So I think that's the real entry point. And Margaret, we'll let you have the last word.
Thank you so much. I think you nailed it, Yvonne. And then also, you know, how do you work with faculty that do not think they know enough about climate change to teach about it? So I think that's very valid. I come from social sciences, and that's something that, you know, made me a little bit nervous back when I was teaching. But going back to the resources in Subject to Climate, there's a section called professional learning. And this is something you could share with your, you know, staff members. And I'm guessing it might be on like climate change basics. And there are, you know, if they want a course on it, there could be these different courses. And let's say they want it, you know, they don't want to go to a synchronous one, they want asynchronous options. And there's a couple of great ones, but some are like, you know, 9 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe they don't have time, but these are good ones. MIT Environmental Solutions, it's super user-friendly. It's a 2-hour course. I really like Climate Change Crash Course by Climate Science. It's a 1-hour course and it's climate change basics. And they can explore different, you know, and if they want to go as far as a 6-week course from the American Museum of Natural History, there are all these options for different, you know, different needs. And maybe they don't want a course, maybe they want a guide. And so there's this, I personally like this teacher-friendly guide to climate change. I actually read this before. I didn't, you know, you don't need to read the whole 294 guide, but the different chapters are really great on like the teacher-friendly guide on how to teach about climate change and the basics that educators need. And going back to your question about, you know, resources that are vetted and checked for different subjects, that's in the resource database that have been vetted and checked. So you can look at the different subjects, and there are different teaching resources, different types, but you can also look at examples of how educators have created lesson plans from that in different disciplines as well. So hopefully that's a quick summary of how to address those two questions.
Right. And what we will do for each of you who's attended is we'll send you a follow-up email with the link to the recording, assuming we're able to get it. And we'll go through the chat. Tobias is saving the chat, and we'll just pick out the different resources that the links that we put on there, because I know it's hard to copy everything in the chat while you're attending the session. So I just want to give a huge thanks to Margaret, not only for presenting this morning, but for the work that you and David and your whole team are doing in creating this subject climate resource, which is really giving us the ability to transform climate education. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. And Lisa and you and anybody else who wants to hear this again, We are having another session at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight, and Margaret will be doing the presentation then. And if you go onto the Worldwide Teach-In homepage and click down to the calendar, you can get to the link for that session.
And of course, encourage other colleagues who might want to learn about this. This is a great chance to learn about subject climate tonight, or obviously just send them the link to, you've got a great name. It's easy to remember, subject climate. So bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so Tobias, please save the chat and
Yeah, I did. Stop recording.
yourself get